All right. So thank you all so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to join you. And, I was saying to Theo as we prepared for this, I know the whole coronavirus situation has been, I can speak for myself that it's been incredibly stressful and worrying. But one of the small silver linings is that I get to participate in events like this one around the world and connect with people who I otherwise might not have met. So I'm really thankful to be able to be here today. As I just mentioned, my name is Amy Bucher. I am the Vice President of Behavior Change Design at MadPow. We are a design consultancy in the Northeastern United States, and we work primarily with both healthcare and financial services companies. And I published a book earlier this year with Rosenfeld Media called Engage, Designing for Behavior Change, which is about applying the psychology of motivation to designing mostly digital, but also service design type experiences in a way that helps people become engaged with them and ultimately experience better outcomes. So today I wanted to share with you a perspective on building digital health experiences that are trustworthy, which is a really important aspect of designing a product that people can and will use. So what is so important about trust? Why did I hone in specifically on this topic? If you think about the healthcare technology lifecycle, you need your users to, and this is an oversimplification, but you need your users to do at least three things. So you need them to actually adopt the technology in the first place. And in order for that to happen, people need to trust it, because healthcare data is by its very nature, it's sensitive, it's personal, and people, they have a sense that if it were to be abused or leaked, that could have really negative consequences for them. So they have to trust your technology in order to even try to use it in the first place. So that's the first reason it's important. Then you need them to use it regularly. And in order for someone to come back and repeatedly use a digital health product, they need to feel, again, like their data is protected, like it's being used in a way that makes sense. And they have to feel like they're receiving some value back for it. I think sometimes as designers, it's easy to get caught up in our own value proposition and to feel like we are offering value to our users without putting ourselves in the user's shoes and saying, what is this doing for this person? How is this benefiting our user along the way? And how can we make that value proposition clearer to them at each step so they feel like the efforts they're taking to share their information, to participate, are worthwhile for them? And then the third piece is recommend and return. And so with most digital healthcare technology, there will come a point where your users probably stop using it. They might graduate. There's some healthcare technology where there's a limited course of engagement, and then somebody reaches a milestone and they're done. Sometimes they just disengage because they lose interest. There may be something in their lives. In either case, there's two things that we want to set the stage for. The first is recommend. So data has shown that word of mouth and peer recommendation are really important mechanisms to get new users into a product. And so you want your graduating users to leave with a sense of warm feeling so that they make those recommendations to the people in their lives. They become a source of new referrals. And then the second piece is we also know with healthcare, often our behavior change journeys are cyclical. We might accomplish a goal, but then we have a setback. We have another health event, or if it's a weight loss journey, for example, we may regain weight. And then we need to do that whole process again. And so if you have users who are going to need to use your product again in the future, you want to leave them feeling positive about it so that yours is the first one they think of when it's time to go back and try again. So three kind of big reasons, if you think about the healthcare product life cycle, why building trust and maintaining trust are really important. The two ways that you do that, the two pillars or foundations on which trust rests are, first of all, designing for trust, and then communicating to your users about why they should have that trust. And so I'll talk a little bit about both of those. First is designing for trust. And one of the things that I think is pretty apparent at this point is that there are often cases with technology where the designers did not initially think about some of the possibilities that the product could be abused, misused, or hacked. And as we grow more understanding of the potential ways that might happen, it's incumbent on us as designers to protect against it when we're creating our products. So we really need to place data privacy and security at a high premium in our designs. And that also means that once we have people using our products, it's really important not to change the rules of the game on them. We've seen some examples, like for example, with Facebook, where they'll enter third-party partnerships along the way, and their existing users see their privacy agreements change, but they're not made aware of that in a way where they can really opt in or opt out of that. That sort of thing is what I mean about designing to protect trust. We need to be sure that users are opting into what's actually happening. If there's a significant change to that, they're alerted to it and given the opportunity to change their minds. And that we are taking all of the precautions we possibly can to make sure that people's data is respected and treated well. And that's particularly important right now with COVID, because one of the technologies that we've been talking about that's potentially life-saving is contact tracing. And so we've seen a number of big technology companies talk about what they might be able to offer in terms of apps or geolocation that helps people keep track of who they've been in touch with so that we can follow the course of an infection and alert people and appropriately quarantine. And one of the dynamics that we're already seeing on social media and in the news is reluctance to use these technologies because of a lack of trust. And so this is now an example where creating and maintaining that trust can truly be a matter of life and death. So it's very, very important as we think about, these new COVID technologies in particular, but technology, healthcare technology in general. How do we make sure that we're actually building so that that trust from users is deserved? So I'm not going to go into what exactly it means to protect data privacy. There are technology experts who are far better than I at understanding that. What I do want to spend some time on is how do you actually communicate your trustworthiness to your users so that they see that your product is one that they can feel comfortable interacting with, providing with their data, and having a relationship with, really. So I've broken it down into 5 principles, and I'll provide a few examples of products that do each of these well. But just so that you have the high-level list, these are the 5 principles that I think are quite important for communicating trustworthiness with your digital health product. So first is establishing your credibility. Then is providing your user with details about how you will live into the trust that they're giving you. The third one is related to content and how you actually write the voice of the product, incorporating warm tone and personalization. Next is offering clear and immediate value. And I talked about with the technology lifecycle, getting someone to remain in a relationship with your product often involves providing them with value along the way. And then lastly, giving users opportunities where you can to make meaningful choices about what their experience looks like. So I'll go into some examples for each of these. First is establishing credibility. And as you know, in healthcare, many times the products that we work on actually are built on clinical protocols or on other research, which gives us a really good advantage compared to other technology disciplines. So the first thing that you can do to establish credibility is share how your product is based on science, actually expose some of those protocols and recommendations, and let your users know that there is an evidence base behind the product that you've built. The screen share I have here is from Happify, which is a mood improvement app. And one of the things that they do particularly well is they make their evidence base very obvious to users. You can actually click through and get to a website where they have links to the peer-reviewed papers. Most users actually won't do that. They're not that interested that they will read the original manuscript. However, knowing that it exists can give them a peace of mind and help them feel like this is a protocol that I should engage in because I can trust it. The second is showing who's behind the curtain, who actually created this product. So many products in healthcare do have experts who are part of the product team. And letting users know that can, again, really create that feeling of trust. So let them know who are the product developers, what are their professional credentials, what are their research backgrounds, and why were they chosen to be a part of this team. You see a screenshot here from Curable, which is a pain management app, and they involve a number of different types of professionals in developing it. So regardless of what your own personal opinions of how to manage pain are, there's someone on that team who probably aligns well with that. And then the third one is showing that it's trusted by others. So the celebrity endorsement is a thing for a reason, but it doesn't have to be a celebrity. This example is from DietBet. They offer success stories from other users. Showing any sort of normative feedback or specific stories from satisfied customers can go a long way in helping people feel like this is a good product for them. And I mentioned peer recommendation is a really strong adoption tool. This is an extension of that, where letting people know that there are other users who've had a good experience can make them more willing to participate themselves. Second is providing details. So really letting people know what it is you're going to do to make it so that they can trust you. And this is where this feels like it might be a sort of boring thing, but I think it's a really important thing to consider as a product designer. And I've worked for a number of years as a member of a product team where we sort of say, okay, lawyers, you take care of the legalese, all of the fine print, the terms and conditions, the user agreements. And I've grown to believe that that's really a mistake, because that legalese, even though people do not read it in detail, communicate something important about what their product experience will be. So over here on the right, I'm not trying to pick on Oshi. It's actually a really good app that does great things for people with irritable bowel syndrome. But they have very standard legalese. You can see it's like boilerplate text, lots of small print. If you tried to read it, there's legal terminology that I know I'm not familiar with. But this is one of the first signals to a user about how the product will treat them. So it's one of the very first things that people see during onboarding. And so it has a symbolic importance. And one of the things that you have an opportunity here is to get ahead of things like, are they trying to trick me? Is this so much legalese because they're trying to get me to agree to something that I wouldn't agree to if I understood it? Is this a product that it's going to be really hard to unsubscribe from? Will the disenrolling process be as complicated as the enrolling process? Am I signing up for something that I don't want to sign up for? So just as an example, this is a pretty infamous one. This is from Apple TV operating system, and their terms of service is 256 pages. People tend not to read even the short ones. They're certainly not going to read ones that are this long, and it's quite filled with legal jargon. So this is not recommended. On the other hand, Pinterest, which is, I know, not a healthcare technology, but I think they do one of the best jobs in all of technology with their legalese and really making it user-friendly. So they break it into sections. You can see the navigation at the top that's by topic. And they also give you the TLDR, the too long didn't read, at the end of each section. So it says here, more simply put, and they put just into plain English, what is it that we said in this section with all of our legal terminology? They make it really easy for an average user, if they're so inclined, to understand what they're agreeing to in a legal form. And I think that sets the stage for a trusting relationship with the product. The third, as I mentioned, is related to content, to actually developing the voice and tone of your product in a way that helps people emotionally feel like they have a relationship with it. Trust is not just a cognitive thing. It's not something that you can just earn with arguments and data. It also has to come from that heart connection, and the content is one of your best tools to do that. So one thing that you can do, designing for acceptance. My background's in psychology. My PhD is in psychology. And one of the things that psychological science tells us is that people are looking to feel like they are really understood and they're accepted. And so you have opportunities in your product to create this sense of, I see you and I'm meeting you where you are. So the two examples I've shared here, one is from a shared decision-making tool by ME Solutions, now owned by Wolters Kluwer, where a patient and a doctor would sit down together and go through a series of questions that are for the patient. They're about the patient's preferences, the patient's lifestyle, and the answers to those questions will help the doctor and the patient together decide on the best treatment. And what I like about this in terms of creating trust is it really gives the patient room to express who they are and not be judged for it. So right here, this person, it's very important to have flexibility in their schedule. They maybe are not going to be a good candidate for a treatment that is firmly scheduled at the same time every single day. And putting that out there with a non-judgmental tone gives them the space to express that and ultimately wind up with something that works for them. On the right, we have Wobot, which is a chatbot for people with mood disorders. And it does a really nice job of just hanging in the moment with whatever users tell them. So they use a lot of images and GIFs and Giphies to create that sense of fun and acceptance. It's another example of how you can do that. That's maybe a little bit less sciencey, a little bit more human and fun. And I mentioned part of it is also feeling like you're really seen and accepted. And so in general, I will say healthcare technology does not do as good a job with this as consumer technology. So I have an example here from Spotify. They create your daily playlists based on the things that you've listened to in the past. And they do a really nice job at recognizing the fingerprint of your musical taste and reflecting back to you the type of musical fan that you are. And that creates this sense of trust because I can see that this product understands me. On the right is from a program called Lose It, which is a weight loss app. And they do this a little bit differently, where they ask in the onboarding process what people's preferences are around technology, around data collection. And then they explicitly say how they plan to honor those preferences. And again, that's a really nice way with content to express this sort of warm, I care about you, tell me what you want, and I will try to give it to you. And then I did just want to briefly say that personality is a good thing. We use a lot of technology in our day-to-day lives, and the more that we can have some kind of actual distinct voice, tone, something that our product stands for, it helps users create that relationship and feel that trust. Offering immediate value. So again, users are often providing really sensitive personal data to these products, and we want to make sure they feel like it's worthwhile for them, that there's a reason why they're doing it and why they should continue to do it. So one way we can offer value is by immediately educating or giving users insights into either themselves or into a topic. These are two different early product experiences. So the one on the left is from a product called Rubric that helps people who are caregivers, typically for a spouse or an aging parent. And it leads them through a questionnaire, but at each step, it actually says, here's why we're asking you this question. And so that offers some education to people. They may not have thought about, is he still driving, as being an important aspect of a caregiving decision, but the product right away explains, no, actually, that's something we want to think about, and here's why. And then Happify does a nice job, again, as you choose which activities to do, at letting you know what benefits you can expect from it. So it's a really quick way to let users know, if you do this, you will get something out of it. You can also show users you're listening. That's a way to provide value as well. And this gets back to what I said before, too, about people really seeking to be seen and understood. So Cake is a product in the United States that helps people with end-of-life planning. So creating all of the documents that they need for, for their families to be taken care of after they pass. And after you go through your onboarding, you get a personalized package of recommendations based on your needs. So right away, that says, we've listened to you, we're offering you something that is personalized to you. And then 7 Cups is another chatbot that provides a therapy type experience. So again, for people with mood or mental health concerns. And it asks your name right away, and then it uses your name. It shows you that it's listening to you. It cares about who you are as an individual. The last pillar of communicating trust that I wanted to talk about is giving users meaningful choices within your product. And there's a couple ways you can do this, but there's also a couple of ways that designers typically stumble, because I think it's very easy for us to think, I'll just give people lots of choice. I'll make this a really choiceful experience for them. And then they'll feel like there's a lot of meaning in this. In fact, too much choice can be bad. We've probably all heard analysis paralysis or had the personal experience of sitting in front of Netflix and there's so many things to watch that there's nothing to watch. And similarly, when we design for our users, we want to try to limit the number of non-meaningful choices we give them. So the example on the left here is actually a product that I worked on. I spent a number of years working on this, and it's a very clinically effective product for improving your sleep. But one of the things we spent a lot of time building was the ability to change out the background you see there on the homepage. So there are 9 options. There's puppies and kittens and a field of flowers and the cityscape that you see here, and users can set whichever one they prefer. I love that feature in terms of its visual appeal, but it's not a meaningful choice. It does not significantly improve the user experience. It does not create that sense of trust. It's just sort of a nice to have aesthetic choice. And similarly, on the right, MediSafe is a medication adherence app where you can actually pay to upgrade. And what that upgrade lets you do is choose the colors on your pill box. Again, probably not a really significant type of choice in terms of creating meaning in the product. It's more of a nice to have aesthetic. And so a rule of thumb that I have when I'm working on products is, if the choice is just influencing the aesthetics of a product, it's probably not meaningful. Instead, what we're trying to look for are ways for users to express their values, their identities, and the things that matter to them. So this is a product called Noom. It's also a weight management app, but they do a really particularly good job in their onboarding at guiding users through a thought process where they think about what's important to them and articulate it. So these 4 screens all come from the onboarding of Noom, and they ask people to state their goal, which is common. A lot of products do that. But once users provide that information, it actually continues to ask them, like, okay, you said this is your goal. Let's talk more about that. Why is it your goal? And so if you work in product management, you may be familiar with the laddering technique or the 5 whys, where you continue to ask, well, okay, why? Why are we using this feature? What is important about this? Similarly with goals, if you ask people enough times, you can usually arrive at something that's really deeply personal to them, really meaningful to them. And if you can help them think about that in conjunction with whatever they're doing in your product, they're more likely to engage in those behaviors because it's helping them do something they care about. And because they've had that intimate experience of thinking about it within the confines of your product, they're going to feel that sense of trust. So just to kind of wrap up here, trust is really about respect. So creating a sense of respect for your user and letting them know that that is how you feel about them, that you regard them in a respectful way. And that includes respecting their data and privacy, their preference, their time, and their goals. And the choices you make in how you both design and communicate about products are how you accomplish this. So with that, I think that we have some time for questions.
One of the questions I have really is, does legalese really just, does it create trust when clearly most people don't read it?
So I found in my experience that there will always be some users who do look at it. I'm not going to say they read it, because I really don't think many people, if any people, read it word for word. But I know in my experience working in healthcare software that there's a small subset of users who will browse it because they have specific concerns about their privacy and their data, and they want to find the information to answer their questions. So I think for those users, first of all, having a way for them to parse through the legalese and arrive at the answers they're looking for is really important. And I think it's another one of those things too, where whether you read it or not, typically you have to accept it as part of the onboarding. And I think that if you can surprise people with something that's a little different from the standard, if it's not the Apple 256-page agreement, then it does make a difference. They perceive that, and it kind of gets into the gestalt of how they feel about the product.
Absolutely. I love the concept that Pinterest came up with. I love that. Very short.
Yeah. They do such a nice job. It's funny, the Rosenfeld book that came out right before mine is called Writing is Designing. So it's about content development and content strategy. And I did not know the authors before both of our books came out. We didn't talk about this, but we both talked quite a bit about Pinterest and what a nice job they did with really communicating this tough information in an easy to understand way.
Her question is, do you have insights on the topic of trust in contexts where AI is used?
Yes, I do. I've actually spent a lot of time on this recently. So first of all, AI is just a tool, is one point I want to make. So when I'm thinking about design and AI is a potential tool in the toolkit, I want to be careful about using it in places where it makes sense and it enhances the user's ability to accomplish a goal, instead of over-relying on AI because it is the sexy, new, sophisticated tool that I have. So that's thing one, is making sure that you use AI where it makes sense. I think overusing it can erode trust, because if it doesn't make sense, it's sort of like, well, okay, then why is this here? What is it trying to do? It almost invites suspicion. But the second thing with AI that I think we really need to pay attention to is the data on which the algorithms are trained. And there's increasingly evidence that that is a place where people stumble. So there's a couple of books that I recommend. I just had a paper come out on Medium, and I added a little reading list to the end with links to all of these books. But there's a few authors who have explored ways in which AI has been built on basically bad data sets that encode racism or sexism or other bias. And what happens with any sort of machine learning algorithm is that it basically intensifies. It doubles down on whatever has been shown in that data set to be true. So there's an example in the United States, in Los Angeles, where they have a limited number of spaces for homeless people. And they basically run a lottery among the homeless population to see who qualifies for these. They're either free or highly subsidized apartments. But the way that data set is built, it basically is reinforcing historical racism. So I think when we think about AI, one of the things that's going to be really important as we use it more is to be very, very, very critical of the data sets we use. Oh, there's another example recently from a health insurance plan in the United States where they used prior use of healthcare as a proxy for need. And so what they found is that Black patients historically have used less healthcare. So the algorithm was actually saying that if you have two patients with the same health condition, the Black patient historically didn't need healthcare as much. That's not actually true. It's that historically they were not able to access the healthcare. So we really need to be critical about what data we're using and how we're interpreting that data. And I think that that's going to be the crux of creating and maintaining trust with AI.
Fantastic. Okay. I think this is the last one from Pew. And is there methods to find balance on term of service, long I think that's the question.
Oh yeah, so I worked with this. I used to work for Johnson & Johnson for one of their operating companies for a number of years building products. And this is something where we spent some time with the legal team, because typically the legal team does own terms of service. They need to make sure that it fulfills all the legal obligations that they have. And so we worked with them to basically create almost two versions. We had a summary version that was available at the top, but then all of the longer form text was also still there. And so we were trying to accomplish something not as nice as Pinterest did, but similar to Pinterest, where a user who just wanted to get to the answer in plain English could do that. But then the legal team also had that reassurance that all of the things that they needed for their purposes were there. That took some negotiation with them. It took, they have their reasons for needing things to be the way that they are. And so we really had to spend a lot of time with them. And I don't think that we arrived at an optimal place, but I think we did arrive at a better place. And I will say the other thing too, is when we do interviews with our users, we learn a lot about what privacy concerns they might have. And so that gives us an opportunity to go back to our legal teams and say, and I'll be specific here because this is something we did here. Our customers, our users are concerned that their doctor is going to see the data that they put into this digital health app. And we need to let them know clearly that that data is not available to the doctor. The way that we're saying it right now, the legally correct way that we're saying it, is not communicating to your average user the truth, the fact behind it. So we need to also put in their language what's happening so that they can feel confident about it.
Giving you praise in a question. How do you manage not to say or at all? Seriously, did you do a lot of training for this? It's so great to listen to you talking and explaining.
Well, thank you. I try. I've been talking for a long time. I've been presenting for probably about 20 years now.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the first time I presented was in grad school, 2002 in New Orleans. I was so nervous. I lost my contact lenses the night before, so I had to wear my big, ugly glasses. And I was shaking, like visibly shaking, and couldn't stop my hands sweating. So I've come a long way since then, but it is just practice over the years. And I think knowing the material, I've spent a lot of time working on this material, so that helps a lot too. But thank you, really. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. Super. Amy, I cannot thank you enough. I know it's our last session for the day. Thank you for bearing with us.
Absolutely. Thank you all. It was great to be here.
So all this will be available on YouTube as well. Guys, thank you so much. And I'm gonna end it there. Amy, have a fantastic rest of the day, okay?
All right, you too. Thank you, everybody.
Super. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.